Some of these things might not be required, but good luck getting hired without them. In this video, we're going to look at the most crucial checks, qualifications, and trainings that you need in order to be an independent support worker and get yourself hired. Now, this video is not going to be about TAFE or university qualifications like diplomas, bachelor degrees, Cert 4s, etc. This is going to be about things that you can actually get done this week in order to make yourself more hireable or get hired in the first place. Before we get into that though, if you're an independent support worker that gets value from these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit subscribe. It means the world to us. So let's start off by looking at the Working with Children check. The Working with Children check is a mandatory check if you are working in a child-related industry or working with children in some way. Each state has their own way of applying, their own method of processing that. And so in this video, I'm going to look at the New South Wales version of basically all these checks, but I will provide the link to each state in the description. So the Working with Children check in New South Wales costs $107 and is valid for 5 years. Essentially what it is a police background check. However, it is focused primarily on whether or not you can be deemed safe to work with children, obviously. So when they're reviewing any criminal history that you might have, whether it be light or very bad, they're going to be considering whether or not that makes you a risk to children. It can also encompass other things like any mandatory reporting that has been done against you in other workplaces and things like that. Now, when you're looking at applying, they will say things like the police background check can take up to 4 weeks to come back, and they don't really provide a timeline on how quickly these things will come back. However, if you go to the New South Wales Police website, they advertise that generally speaking, most checks come back within an hour. And I know from our experience, it generally doesn't take weeks and weeks. However, definitely apply before you need it. To apply, you are going to need about 4 ID documents of varying levels. You can find more information on your particular state's website. Again, links in the description. In New South Wales, you will also need to attend the service centre in order to have your identity verified with those documents and to pay your $107. But keep in mind, a point later in this video will also need that requirement, so don't rush off and do that just yet. Wait until you've heard about that. The next one we're going to cover is a police background check. So what a police background check is a point in time check of your criminal history. It isn't required. However, it can give people peace of mind that you don't have some elaborate criminal history, and that you are a safe person to be dealing with either whoever you are looking after, whether it be them or that they're a representative and they're vetting you for this other person. They want to make sure that you're obviously a safe person. Now, whilst you might think, well, the Working with Children check includes a police background check, you are correct. However, that is specifically based on whether you are safe to work with children, and this is a more general criminal history check. Generally speaking, I would recommend that you get both. Again, each state has their own policy and their own way of processing this, and likely their own costs as well. In New South Wales, the cost is, at the time of recording, $55.80, excluding GST. And as I said, with the Working with Children check, they advertise that most checks will come back within 1 hour. You complete this directly through the New South Wales Police community portal, I believe it is. There'll be a link down below. And then participants can actually verify your police check on that community portal as well. For this check, you'll need at least 2 identity documents. Again, go and check before you need to apply to make sure that you have those there. Generally speaking, it's things like passports, birth certificates, driver's licenses, maybe a Medicare card. Now, as I said, you might think the Working with Children check and the police background check have a fair bit of overlap. Why would I get both? Well, wait till you hear about this next one. Before we get into the next check, I would like to invite you to join our Facebook group made exclusively for independent support workers. It's a group where you can come and ask questions, get advice, share your own tips and tricks with exclusively independent support workers, no large providers, no participants, and no other businesses. So if you'd like to join that group, head on down into the description. There'll be a link and you can go and join it there. The NDIS Worker Screening Check. It's very similar to the Working with Children check in that it involves a police background check. However, it is specific to working with people with disabilities. Some independent support workers will be required to get this check. However, some will not be required, but you still may want to get it anyway. Again, Another piece of evidence, another thing on your resume that shows that you are a safe person to be working with who are some of the most vulnerable people in our society. As an independent, you are required to get it if you are a registered provider or if you're working with self-managed participants who have decided that the only people they will engage with are people with an NDIS worker screening check. The check is conducted by a screening unit in each state. In New South Wales, that is Services New South Wales, same as the Working with Children check. The documentation requirements are also very similar to a Working with Children check, and so this is where you would get all of your identity documents, you would apply for your Working with Children check, your NDIS worker screening check, and then that way, when you go into your Service New South Wales in your town, you would take your documents once and you would get it done all in one go. Don't worry, that is not where the similarities end. It is also $107 and valid for 5 years. So far we've got the Working with Children check, a police background check, and an NDIS worker screening check. All of these virtually cover the same thing. However, you will likely find that you might end up needing all three, if not at least two of them. Our last one is not really a check, it's more of a training and a qualification, and that is first aid and CPR. Now, I see in these Facebook groups people discussing first aid and CPR, and a lot of independents are not sure whether they actually need it, and I would say absolutely go and get it. It is a no-brainer. It is not a requirement by the NDIS or anywhere legally. However, you have to bear in mind that you have a duty of care over the participants that you are working with, and you need to make sure that you are able to take care of those people in a medical situation. At least, obviously, until an ambulance or a doctor can arrive. So getting your first aid and CPR is a very important step in making sure that you can actually fulfill that duty of care. There are multiple providers for these courses. Some do each of the first aid and CPR separately. Some do them bundled into a course. Some will do them on the same day versus separate days, etc. From what we've seen and what we've paid, you can expect to pay around about $200 for both. As an example, the Red Cross provides a one-day course for $195 in our area at least, and it gives you first aid and CPR. So that will generally take from about 9 till 4 in the afternoon, but you'll have both qualifications. I have also seen it done over 2 separate days where the days are a bit shorter and you do first aid on one and CPR on the other. The easiest way to find a session for you is to simply Google first aid and CPR and then your town, and you'll see a list of providers come up. You can choose your own, check the prices, and book generally online. So let's summarize. There's 3 checks that are really close together, which are Working with Children check, NDIS worker screening check, and a general police background check. In New South Wales, if you want to get all 3, which I would probably recommend that you do, it's going to cost around $270 all up. The Working with Children check and NDIS worker screening check are valid for 5 years, and the police background check is a point-in-time check. So therefore, you may have to do that one every now and then if a new participant wants to see that you haven't got into any crime between those times. Then we have first aid and CPR, which is likely going to set you back about $200 and can be generally completed in 1 day. And obviously that one's a very important one to make sure that you can fulfill your duty of care to your participants. And my last point before I go would be that whilst some people may be required and not required to get certain versions of these checks, ultimately it is going to be up to your participants what checks they say you must have. If you want to work with a particular participant and they want to work with you, but they will only work with people who have the Working with Children check, the NDIS worker screening check, first aid and CPR, and a police background check, well, it's up to you and them to determine whether or not you're willing to go and get those things, or perhaps whether they're willing to settle to not have them. However, with the amount of independent support workers out there now and the amount of agencies taking on clients, if you want to be as hireable as possible and have as few hiccups as possible when trying to get new clients, I would recommend simply get all of them. Have as many things on your resume as you possibly can. When it comes time to saying, yes, let's work together, there should be absolutely no hiccups about your qualifications, your safety, or your ability to fulfill your duty of care. As we spoke about with the NDIS worker screening check, registration makes certain requirements come in and out of play. And if you're not sure whether or not you should or shouldn't be registered, or perhaps you're weighing up registration and not sure whether it might be actually beneficial to stay stay unregistered. Our next video is going to dive into the world of NDIS registration, who should be registered, who shouldn't be, who has to be, and we will also have a video coming out specifically for the NDIS worker screening check. So if you're interested in either of those, make sure you hit subscribe so that you know when they come out, and join us over on Facebook. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.